Hey, are you thinking about buying or selling a business? Join us May 3rd for the M&A Launchpad Conference. This is the premier conference for entrepreneurs, investors, navigating mergers and acquisitions in the lower middle market. You're going to connect with top deal makers, gain insight strategies to take your business search and your business acquisitions to the next level. So get your tickets now at malaunchpad.com and use the code LAUNCH for $200 off your ticket. We're looking forward to seeing you.
All right, on today's episode, we interviewed Dominick Blue, where we talked about going into the Marine Corps, then going and getting a software engineering job, right? And then really going off and learning about entrepreneurs and acquisitions and buying your first businesses, right? He bought an HVAC business and then 3-4 months later bought a second tuck-in into that business. And then we kind of dived into AI and a lot of the challenges that small businesses face and some different ways to solve them. So Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
There was a lot of stuff we touched on. But I'm always going to go back to the mental attitude it takes to be an acquisition entrepreneur. I have not interviewed. We've done now probably over 60 of these. I've never heard anybody say it's been easy or anything else, right? It's that mentality of just make a decision, go after it, make it happen. And Dominick just is that, right? Being from the Marine Corps and then being tenacious enough to go after and acquire a business within 8 months and then to acquire another tuck on in 3 months. And then just to be able to do these things and now developing AI to simplify and make things a little bit easier in business. I mean, powerful meeting. There's great stuff in our meeting notes. This is great.
No, agreed. I mean, lots of great energy too, right? He's very strategic. And again, some of that military history kind of shows. And so, I mean, really enjoyable podcast. Really enjoyed talking with him.
Hey guys, go ahead and just pause the podcast for a second. When you're buying a business, you need to ensure the financial health of the company. The quality of earnings is mission critical. It doesn't matter what size business you're buying. Patrick O'Connell Advisory Group, they're dynamic. They do a great job. They're going to look over your shoulder. They're going to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And this guy's done over 200 buyers successfully, just like you. So reach out to him. And it's o'connelladvisorygroup.com. Click the link in our show notes. Can't live without this.
Hey, Dominick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Excited to kind of listen in and hear a little bit more about your journey. So maybe for the listeners, right, just give people a brief overview on your background, kind of where you got started, where you came from, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think like many folks, it was kind of in my blood as a young kid, having your own small business, newspaper routes, wholesaling candy, those types of things. Fast
Pokemon cards.
Yeah, exactly. Pokemon card. Yeah. And then fast forward to my professional life. I started out in the United States Marine Corps, spent 11 years there. Thank you. Yeah. And then transitioned to the tech industry where I'm a software engineer. And then that kind of, as I was looking for like the next phase of life, I came across acquisition entrepreneurship. And then shortly launched Nostra Group in 2023 and began my search there.
All right. So, man, okay, lots of different pieces. So maybe, let's talk about going from software engineering to entrepreneurship, right? Or acquisition entrepreneurship. What were you doing in software engineering and what led you to maybe want to make a transition there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I am, from a philosophical standpoint, I really enjoy diversity. And so, typically the playbook in software is you go work at a company, you get RSUs, you let your stock vest, and then you kind of play that conservative playbook. I wanted to look at something that was more outside the box and something that would allow me to focus on diverse problem sets. That's kind of like intuitively who I am as a person. And so when I found acquisition entrepreneurship, it really attracted me because it's not like you're solving one problem for 20 years. As we all know, for anyone that's acquired a business, it's 1,000 problems that are different every single day. And then you can kind of use those lessons learned to expand to across your portfolio as you do more acquisitions.
And how did you come across entrepreneur acquisition?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my introduction was I came across the Acquiring Minds podcast. and of that was like my forte into acquisition entrepreneurship. And then I went and read Buy Then Build by Walker Deibel, and then the HBR Guide to Buying a Small Business, and then I was hooked. Right, those were like the three.
Checked all the boxes. Very vanilla approach to getting into it. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
So one of the things, Dominick, not only did you get into acquisition entrepreneurship in 23, you've actually closed on a couple acquisitions, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I started my search in 2023. About 8 to 9 months into the search, secured my first LOI. And then it was actually during that process, as I was closing out that deal, that through the network, I had what ended up being a tuck-in acquisition come across my desk, and then secured a LOI on that. So in very short order, in 2024, I closed on one business in January. I had a baby in February, and then I closed on the second business in April. So that was 2024 was busy.
First off, congratulations for multiple reasons, right?
Thank you.
But now you're like, hey, let me tell you about all my problems. And you're like, you thought the core was hard.
Question, you mentioned search. Did you do a traditional search, or were you just self-funded looking to do your own thing?
Yeah, self-funded. Yeah, I didn't take on any investment capital, so self-funded.
And you still maintained your day job, right?
I did.
You could do this at the same time. So then you're out there. So maybe before we'll come talk about the first acquisition here in a second, but you made up your mind, you're going to go find a business. Where'd you start looking, and what did you think you were going to buy? Like, was there a specific vertical you were looking at? I know obviously you were in software. Did you say, I'm going to go buy a software business, or, did you go to the other side and say, you know what, I'm going to go do a manufacturing business, right? What was the initial in your thesis? And then we can kind of segue into what did you buy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for the listeners who are just getting started in their acquisition journey, I started out very broad, very standard, go to biz, buy, sell. I think my approach, I found value in it at least, which was rather than just look through the thousands and thousands of listings on biz, buy, sell, I really focused on finding the brokers and building relationships with the brokers. So I just used biz, buy, sell as like a directory to get access to the brokers. Started building relationships with those folks and with bankers that, early in the journey. And I didn't have a thesis when I started out. Initially I wanted to go into software, but at the time they were selling for, increased multiples. Yeah. So I pivoted from that. And over time, what I did was I built a thesis around home service businesses that were say 500 to 750 in SDE. That were constrained to the market that I was in, which is Southern California. So that was like the very primitive, thesis that I had. And what I'll tell people is when you're starting out, spend a lot of time building the thesis first, because it reduces the noise. Because for every one specific deal you look at, if it's in a different vertical, you could spend a lifetime learning about that particular industry. So although people get FOMO and they feel like they're going to miss a deal, they're actually optimizing their time, especially like me. I had a full-time job. You're having to optimize time to really focus your search, right? And that also makes the presentation to brokers and bankers a lot clearer when you are focused like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The thesis is one of those things, but I think you kind of said it like how I stumbled into my thesis. You didn't really have a thesis, and then you went out and you found your company, and then you were like, okay, this is now the beginning of my thesis, right? And so
the thesis is you'll build a thesis.
Yeah, because you're obviously it's how it is. But it would have been awesome, to have had the thesis before, because I probably wouldn't have stumbled across some of the mistakes early in the days. And it was kind of like my sister. She knew what she was going to be she knew for her whole life, she knew she was going to be an attorney, right? She had a clear path to that. I had no clue what I was going to do. I like everything. I'm like, I like this, I like that. And so you build up this kind of like ability to be a jack of all trades, but then you're like, right. So then when you go to do your thesis, you're like, I like it all. And exactly. It's just, I suggest, just like you, piggybacking, have a clear thesis, right? And it doesn't have to be it can still be a little broad, but golly, man, it helps when you're focused.
It does, 100%. And to your point, I put in a few LOIs before I secured the deal that I ended up closing on, like landscaping, and then I was looking at an automotive shop and, all these other things. But to your point, as I finalized the thesis, that was really the catalyst that allowed me to get the second deal. Because by that point, the brokers and the bankers really knew what I was looking for and what I was doing. So when that second deal came across their desk, they were like, "Oh, hey, Dominick, like here, this is probably a good fit for you because it's right in your market and in your thesis." So absolutely.
All right, well, let's get right into that deal. So, what did you buy, right? And kind of how did you structure it? What it looked like? And whenever you first saw it, did you think you were going to buy that, or did you get a change of heart?
Yeah, great question. So, deal one was a just sub $2 million in annual revenue. It was air duct cleaning business based in Southern California. And the thought going into it, if for anyone who has a home service business, especially HVAC specifically, there's a lot of regulation and licensing around that. Obviously, I'm not an HVAC technician, so I did not have those licenses. So I had to figure out how to get into the industry, get into the game, if you will, while also still getting a deal across the line. And so a lot of times looking at specific HVAC businesses was a non-starter because there was no way for me to work that out. So anyway, going back to the deal, sub 2 million in revenue, approximately 450 to 500 in SDE. So it was like right there in the range. And it had at the time around 20 employees. And so, that was deal one. And then I'll wait on deal two, but that was deal one.
So in that SDE, what I have found is that once you close, you're in the business. Do you feel like you had the SDE? Do you feel like you guys might have added back too much for them? I mean, what did SDE really work out to be? Because it's shocking, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, in the modeling, I anticipated, I think the number came down to 11 or 12% deviation from the SDE,
good for you,
from the projected SDE. We came in at 9% deviation. So it was like the modeling was like pretty spot on.
Nice.
But to your point, and this is like something that I think we really should hammer on for future, acquisition entrepreneurs. Really take stock in post-close operation expenses. Because in my case, within the first 90 days, I replaced half of my vehicle fleet. So from, working capital, I mean, we walked into kind of a nightmare situation, right? And then there's all these other things that weren't uncovered that you have to take stock in, like employees expecting pay rises and dealing with that, employees who were paid under the table, dealing with that. There's like things that you start to uncover as you get into the operations that start to eat into that SDE.
I'm going to piggyback another thing. I honestly think like when you add back depreciation, right? What people don't realize is that shouldn't be add back. I know that EBITDA is this word that we all throw out, or SDE, and we're all just putting it in. But you had a real fleet to replace, right? Depreciation is not a phantom float through. You've got real capital expenditures, and so on a couple of my deals in the past, I would have looked more at like EBIT. I would have not added back depreciation, and just hold to it until you find an owner that understands that, man, that depreciation, I'm not adding it back. I've got to really spend that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because like you said, you walked in and you had all the cars you have to replace, and you're like, damn, that's not what I thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the old saying goes, cash is king, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think what a lot of us do when we go into acquisition entrepreneurship, at least I did, I got hung up on the modeling in the spreadsheets, and I was like, oh, it pencils out, right? The numbers make sense. But what you really have to look at is like, no, what is worst case scenario for your cash? What's coming in, what's going out on a daily basis? Like, can you project that? And, like, I think going forward, what I would do is I would do a 13-week cash flow projection just as like a scenario, like simulation during due diligence to understand like the first 13 weeks, what is it going to look like for me? Like
Man,
on
you
day
are
one.
speaking my language, dude. I'm
Yeah.
telling you right now, we're closing on a deal right now, and I'm literally told the account, like their bookkeeper. I was explaining to her what her project's going to be next week. I said, I'm going to email you this, and I want you to build this out for me, and then I can work you through it, because this is going to be your job. Is really making sure we manage cash flow. Like, I love that we're talking about this, because we operate as an independent sponsor. So we're going to buy the company or structure the deal, put it together, put the capital together, but we do have an operating partner, right? And we give them a fair slug of equity. So because we want to scale more. I was actually with him at the company Monday and Tuesday, right? Doing the employee walkthrough and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And all I talked about was cash and cash and cash. And he looked at me and was like, man, you're like obsessed with cash. And I was like, man, this is going to be my third acquisition, and every other one we ran short of cash. And I thought I modeled it great. I thought I did. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie until they lie.
It's like,
exactly.
Where'd the money go? You're like, I don't know. We added software. We had to replace Rhonda. Steve, he never had a raise, and now guess what? I have to give him a raise.
Yeah.
Electricity costs double. I mean, I could go through the list that everything's going to happen right after you close. And so I'm glad we share that together, Dominick.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say these, I'm just thinking of the laundry list of things. I remember one night my wife and I were sitting at the dining room table, and we were just looking at the bank account and like going through invoice after invoice. I almost turned into a conspiracy theorist where I was like, somebody's taking the cash. Like, what's happening? Where's all this cash going? I completely share that sentiment. I share that sentiment.
Yeah, but
So how did you structure that deal?
Yeah, so pretty standard, right? SBA 7A loan, 10% capital injection. Like capital stack for me was, I'm not coming back from a finance background, so I think I chose what would be considered the standard approach to a deal or to a capital stack. No seller financing or anything like that.
Got it. And sorry, what was the multiple? You said the SDE was 550.
Yeah. So the multiple worked out to be right around 3x.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So right around 1.6 million, and then you put 10% down, and
that's
just
really
very vanilla. Didn't have the seller carry anything. You didn't do an earnout. Nothing else.
Yeah, that's pretty good for SBA. I think with a 3, right? I think that's really nice 3 times, because your cost of capital is around 10.5. So it really does cut in. And did you have to have that conversation with the seller? Like, hey, like when you, or was he okay with the number, or did you have to explain your thought process of why a 3 times?
Yeah, no, actually the broker that we worked with was phenomenal. And he did a really good job of educating the seller on what to expect. And so we didn't have any of those, contentious conversations about like misalignment on sell price or anything like that. So everybody was pretty comfortable with the number that we arrived at.
Got it. And did you come up with it, or did the broker just say, hey, here's the ask, and then you just got comfortable with it?
No, we were within $200,000 of each other when we came to the table to talk about like what is the offer price. Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe the next piece. So, a seller that fully exits a business, right? That's a scary business to buy. And so what gave you the confidence that, outside of just the DD that you did, that, hey, all of this is accurate and it's going to work out, right? Because for us, we typically try to keep more skin in the game of the seller, versus it sounds like you had no skin in the game. And so I'm just curious, like that's gutsy.
Yeah. So it was a gutsy move. I think what gave me confidence was I had a strategic plan to turn it into an HVAC business. So, if you looked at like a pie chart of like the distribution of like services offered, it would have been, once, and I'm kind of fast forwarding the story of like after we did the second deal, it would have been like a 70-30 split in terms of air duct cleaning services to HVAC services. And the strategy that I was going in with was, we're going to flip that. because that's what a standard residential HVAC company looks like, where majority is like installation and service, and then you have this like subcomponent of air duct cleaning as an add-on feature, right? So that was the thesis that I was going into. The other part was there was one critical piece that, again, kind of gave me confidence into closing the deal the way I did, and it was the management layer. So there was like a good management structure that was in place that I could then leverage to go do these tuck-ins, because especially when you're looking at HVAC companies or really any home services companies, what you often see is the key man issue, which is the owner, it holds 9 out of the 10 positions in the company, and so they can't really sell it. So they end up closing it or selling their book of business or whatever. So that was actually what the second deal was. It had a key man issue, but because I had the management team in place, it allowed me to go out and do some of the smaller deals to do tuck-ins.
Yeah, I love it. Do you think the leadership skills from the Marine Corps help you with leading and running a business? Do you feel like that's a big 100%. Part of you?
Yeah, every time somebody 100%. Screws up, they drop and give them 20. I mean, it's just, it's tough.
Yeah, we're doing morning workouts before we fire up the trucks. No,
that's how you got to do it, baby. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But
talk to me about that, because here's the thing. When I went out to the Harvard ETA the first time I did, so I was learning about ETA myself, and the community, and kind of it's led us to where we are today on our podcast. There was a tremendous amount of military, took the GI Bill, went back, went to Harvard, got their MBA, and were doing acquisitions. And I got a chance to meet a bunch of these guys and talk to them, and they all said, what I learned in the military has given me the confidence to be able to get into the business in this acquisition side.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge proponent of that. I'll give a shout out to my alma mater. I actually went through the Masters of Business for Veterans program at University of Southern California. So it's like a consolidated 1-year MBA targeted for veterans. And I preach this. In fact, I'm going back next month to speak to them on ETA. I have a strong conviction that the military gives us a special set of skills that allow us to handle the dynamic nature of small business and to build long-term potential in cultivating leaders within your organization. Really, because that's, especially in the Marine Corps, I can speak for the Marine Corps. That is like the number one thing that the Marine Corps does. It cultivates leaders internally on the enlisted side and the officer side. If you look at, we don't hire leaders to come in and lead our organizations, right? And so buying a small business, one of the first things I did on day one was took stock in who had potential for leadership, right? Have a conversation, sit down with the service managers, sit down with the lead technicians. Like, do they have the capacity not just to manage the process, but to be a good example for what the standard is that we're going to set for this organization, right? And how that kind of turns into practicality. A practical approach is a standardized way of delivering the service, a standardized way of delivering customer excellence, a standardized way of following up with a customer. And then subsequently on the inside of the business, a standardized way of how the lead technician coaches and mentors the junior technician, the standardized way of how the manager, coaches and mentors the lead technician, right? You start to create this hierarchy within the business. So very valuable.
No, absolutely phenomenal. Again, like I said, thanks for your service. My father was military, grandfather was military. Military's all through my family. Skipped me. My father was like, "You're my only son and you're not joining the military." And now my son he's at A&M right now. He's in the Corps, and then he's in the Air Force ROTC. So we got him back into that. Yeah. And it's but there's just something said about the leadership and those things that come from the military. And when I meet the guys that are looking at acquisition entrepreneurship, they really see it as like an advantage. Like, this is an advantage that I have, and again, they did this whole search analysis. I met with this guy also at Harvard he's a search fund, and they did this huge analysis, and they said, hey, we're looking at every search we've ever done, and they've been around for 30 years, and they looked at all the different people. to see what was the one characteristic that made those companies successful. And it didn't really have anything to do with Harvard. It had nothing to do with the high level. It had actually nothing to do with the military. It had everything to do with grit, right?
That's it.
But that's what it takes to get through boot camp and all of those things, which is grit, right? And grit is the magic. It's the thing that makes this work because it's very hard, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
This is not easy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so anyways, I get all into the whole part of it, but it's philosophical. I mean, what we do and how we do it. And so that part of the business is it takes that grit to succeed in what we're doing.
I wish you had gone to the military, Casey. Maybe you'd have a little bit more grit anyways.
I know, right? So what's next? Like, so I
or
know
maybe
that,
tell us about that second company, right?
Second,
like kind of what
yeah.
exactly was the situation? You kind of alluded to it, but I mean, is it, you just bought the book of business, you got it heavily discounted. I mean, what was kind of the story there? And then to add to that too, how did you solve getting around the licensing requirements, or have you not solved that yet?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the second business came probably 3.5, 4 months into me closing out deal one. It came from that cadre of brokers and bankers that I told you I built a relationship with. Ironically, the broker was also a veteran, which, is fun to work with. And it was a small 3-man company. The owner was lead technician, customer support, the whole typical playbook. And so what we did was we brought him in with the agreement that he would stay on with us for a period of time, 6 to 12 months, to allow time for us to transition. Specifically, and to your second question, specifically to transition the license aspect. Because we're licensed in the state of California. And so, there's requirements around that. But one of the aspects of the license is it can be the owner that has it, or it can be an employee that has it. Right. So the way we structured it was he came on in this, we call it a responsible managing officer capacity. And so that's how we kind of got around the license. And again, because we were closing the deals so close to each other, he agreed to come on as the RMO prior to closing the second deal. So we started the process really early, brought him in, and then as we began to transition him out, we had already brought in who is now a partner of mine to run the business as the RMO who has the HVAC license. So
got it. So now that's how you're going to keep the permanent license moving forward once that person leaves. Okay, cool.
So again, I'm going to go back to just hard. So how did you, did you just say, I'm going to figure this out? Was that I will figure this out? Is that just what you did? I mean, or did you have you just said, I will figure this out. Here's the way.
Yeah. It's really, a lot of people ask me oh man, what's kind of like the secret sauce, but it's really that simple. It's make a decision that you're going to solve the problem. And there's going to be a solution out there. The way I look at it is Dominick Blue is not the first person that wasn't an HVAC technician that bought an HVAC company. So there has to be a solution out there somewhere, right? It's just a matter of finding it. And so just reminding myself, because I remember when I first started my search, the first business I ever put an LOI on was a commercial landscaping business, which also requires a license. And I went through the whole song and dance of, I have no idea how I'm going to get past this. And it was kind of going through that exercise with that business that by the time I got to these deals, I had already worked out a playbook of how to solve that problem.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I'm sure, if I get to office with Feras and hear the stuff and all the challenges we have, you got these years where you're just banner, you're pounding your chest, we are the best. And then you get your ass kicked the next year. It's this fortitude, but I sent him a text.
There's years where nothing happens and there's weeks where years happen.
Yeah. But I sent him a text this morning. I sent him a text because I'm reading a book right now. And I think honestly, everybody should listen to this book. It's a little bit, it's a Jim Collins book, and it's called B 2.0, Beyond Entrepreneurship. And what it talked about, and it was really kind of in the middle of the book, it starts talking about, because it talks about vision and having all this, but then it got into, he basically has been his whole career the guy that's writing the book, he's talking about how luck plays a huge role in the success of it. However, luck happens usually when things are down. It's the people that are persistent, that are digging out of a hole, right? That never quit, never give up. That's when the luck appears. And he's talking about thousands of stories and entrepreneurs and people that rock climbers and all this stuff. Really gets into, it's in the times where we struggle is when we become those people that find luck, find success, we break through, and it sucks. I really wish it wasn't that way because it's no fun, but that's what we're doing here, right? We've got to keep digging, keep building, keep
we're
going.
We're in the seats to solve problems, not to pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
That's it. And, to your point, to add to that, again, people say, oh man, you're so lucky and this and that. The thing that I tell them is you have to move, because if you're stationary and you don't take action, well, of course you're not going to get lucky. That's not how luck works. Right. But if you move, you're inherently going to find chaos and problems, and right, as you're kind of going beyond the horizon of what you know. Of course it's going to be dangerous and risky, but unless you start moving towards your goal, right? This is again a very marine centric kind of mindset, always moving toward the objective. You're never going to put yourself in the path of luck. Right. So I think I always tell people, like, when in doubt, make a decision. Just make a decision. You're going to find out, like, if you make enough decisions off of the information that you have, you're never going to get 100% information, right? So make a decision with the information that you have, and then make sure you have a feedback loop to quickly figure out if that decision is giving you the right signals that you're going to the right direction or the wrong direction. And then just keep iterating on that process. Yeah. Make a decision, learn from it, make a decision, learn from it. That's how you get lucky. Because I tell people all the time, in the time that I've been doing this, I've gained 10 years of experience and wisdom in what not to do, which inherently gives me really good intuition on things I should do, will do, and can do. Right.
Oh,
I could not say it better, man.
We were literally whiteboarding earlier this week on the third acquisition and just putting, okay, what are all of the things we need to put into this deal to avoid all the mistakes we've made, right? And some of them are just gimmies, right? Things that a seller will agree with, et cetera, but they significantly reduce the risk, reduce the cash in, all of the different things just to give it a chance to, be lucky. I mean, right, we may look back in 2 years and say, that was really lucky. But then it's like, well, no, we made all these other 50 mistakes.
Yeah,
so we get the right structure with the right set of things. So that way it's not going to be lucky. It's actually like we just wrote our success that we set ourselves up for.
Yep.
So
it is truly said that in the game that we are all playing, it only takes one, right? It takes one success. This is all of this stuff's enterprise, and success could be a lot of things. Some people have a number, whatever. For me, it's enough cash coming in that I can do everything I want to do and I don't have to work for it. Right. Exactly. Right. And that is a beautiful place to be, and I've had moments of that where I'm like, I've arrived, and then I've had moments where I haven't, but it's not about having and some people, it may be about the Lambo. I don't care. Have your dream, but whatever that is, these businesses have the ability to create the lifestyle we want. Because we do work on the front to see the results in the back, right? That's the part. We just got off a podcast literally, and I thought this was amazing, Dominic. And I think it might feed into what you're doing. The gentleman he's a self-funded holding company. So he took his company, he's used his own cash. He's been rolling it forward, but he said and he's now on company number 6, and he rolled into a bigger one. But he's then breaking out the real estate, and he's doing these different things where it's kind of sounds like where I think your mind goes. But what he said, and the biggest takeaway I took, he said it compounds massive. He said the compound interest, right? Because if you're buying it at 3x, it's a 33% rate, or you're hoping you're hitting around 33%. And if you're compounding at those type rates, and you do that over a period of 20 years, right? You're gonna have it's gonna be there. Now it's not as easy, but it's that compound. So I kind of have a feeling that's where you're heading, is that mentality. I'm buying these companies, tucking them in, and then I'm going to keep growing.
It is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I started out with Nostra Group, which is my personal holding company. And I alluded to this previously, but if you've ever read any books by Nate Silver, he talks about like the foxes and the hedgehogs, right? And the foxes really are the generalist types who touch a lot of different disciplines. Hedgehogs are really people who are experts. They go really deep in one thing. I naturally am a fox. I like looking at different problems. I specifically like understanding how can I sit at the nexus and take a skill set that I built over here and apply it over here. I call that the transcendence of disciplines, which is, I guess, a very esoteric way of describing it. But nevertheless, the holding company aspect was really attractive to me because I was like, well, I get to learn lessons across the portfolio, and then I get to like reinvest those into different solutions, right? And that's kind of like, we'll talk about this later, but the AI company, that's where that came from. That came from me being a software engineer and then me being an operator and then seeing a problem and saying, oh, over here, I built some skills that I think I could solve that problem. And then now I'm just, dipping it into
go into the AI. Let's jump right into it. Let's get into it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's
get into
absolutely.
it. This is good stuff. I actually might be tapping you to figure out some more about it too.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, so the thesis is this. Especially in the lower middle market, you hit this ceiling where to scale you need top tier talent, but you may not have the cash flow to hire that top tier talent. Right. So what does that mean? That means either A, you can't hire enough people, right? Think of a home service business that needs, 3 dispatchers to really handle the volume. They can't afford it, whatever. That's like a really simple use case. Yeah. Or you can't go out and find that A player who is, you just kind of give them the objective and then they can kind of run and make magic happen for you. In your case, you were talking about the operator, right? Imagine you're at the lower end of the market where you can't afford that top tier operator. And therefore that restricts the time that you have because now you got to keep eyes on this particular project, right? That's one problem. The other problem is our payroll expenses, as we all know, is typically on one of the highest operating expenses we always have. And so the question was, how do we help businesses automate in such a way that the payroll expenses do not grow linearly with the scaling of the company? Because that can increase the margins that you'll experience. The third problem, and this is probably the biggest one for us as owners, we call it the messy inbox problem. But you can imagine a scenario where you're getting emails, phone calls, text messages, Slack messages, team messages, and you're having to play the pivoting of priorities game. And if you don't have the right systems in place, you lose track of which priorities are going to have the highest impact on that particular day. And as we all know, like as owners, you should be making like 3 decisions a day that are the most impactful to move the business forward. But what happens is, especially in the lower middle market, is you get hung up on some scenario that your customer support escalated to you because there's an angry customer and now you have to go do that, but you were actually doing your cash flow projection for this next acquisition. And now that gets put on hold. I was just talking to a friend. I'm talking to a friend of mine about this exact situation where he's trying to do this expansion project, but he's put it on hold because he has all these other little fires that he's having to put out, right? That's the messy inbox problem. What we're doing is we're building a digital workforce that will give you end-to-end workflow automation. And think of customer inbound, customer wants to reschedule a job. Your digital workforce can go from talking to the customer to looking at your calendar, evaluating what's available, sending that back to the customer, and then getting them rescheduled, and then sending you a notification like, hey, we just rescheduled this person, or handling an objection. Right? Customer wants a cancellation and a refund. Your AI agents have a standard way that maybe you have a playbook of how to handle those objections to prevent that person from getting the refund or from leaving your business. So those are a couple of use cases. Happy to go into detail, but I'll pause there.
Got it. And so how, like on that thing right there, so is the company launched yet?
Yeah, so so we're in beta phase. I'll give you the resources to share with the audience.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we have a wait list. There's almost 300 companies on the wait list as we speak. We're doing 3 pilots right now where we're launching agents over the next few weeks for those companies.
So on that, I know we're going to jump to our rocket round, but I'm going to tell you. So we're last year we pursued a platform acquisition in the wastewater business to build. It was a construction company. He builds wastewater down in South Texas. That business, it did not work out for many reasons, but we're still in relationship with the seller, right? We think that we will get that eventually. We stumbled across a bolt-on, much smaller, right? But it has service component to it. It's all service in the wastewater in South Texas. So we are going in right now and we have hired, we hired the right partner to come in, give them a nice slug of equity, all the above, to start figuring out how to get into the service model and really start, like you said, standardize all the processes. But like you said, we're limited on cash. We're limited on all these things. And this is one of those perfect, like if I could figure out like an AI agent that was actually calling our customers that did a panel 20 years ago and just at least creating I don't know, but I want to talk to you about that. So I just want you to think about it. I think that's pretty good. I'll wait till those 300 people get out the queue, but we will be in conversation because that I was literally thinking the other day is like, how do we automate? Because these are like, we don't need to have people in the office and it's in a small town and we just don't have a great employee pool.
Exactly.
And so it's like, if I can automate all these little things that are just automation, it's really, it can be automated. Very cool idea. Yeah. That's going to be your home run right there, bud. Yeah. Congratulations.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I'll end just the AI talk with this for business owners who are thinking about maybe signing up for our company. Are you a customer support company or are you a plumbing company? You have to think about like, what is the value that you're delivering to your customer? We're automating all the stuff that you aren't doing or that you aren't focusing on or shouldn't focus on, we should say. But what that allows for you really, not only the savings and the time savings, but what that allows for you is instead of your customer support person who probably has a decent relationship with your customers, instead of them handling emails and text messages all day, they can spend more time calling your customers and building rapport and building relationships because that's what humans can do, right? That's what makes us different than these AI workforce agents is we can build those relationships. So let's automate the stuff that humans don't need to do. And let's give your people the power to go build those relationships for you, which is just going to be increased lifetime revenue, lifetime value of customers over the long term.
Unbelievable. Dominick.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Let's get to the rocket round. All right. This is where we ask our guests 3 questions, learn a little bit more about them. So Dominick, what do you like to do in your free time?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I have a 1-year-old. He keeps me busy. He's a busy little guy. So I spend a lot of time doing hikes, right, with the family, getting outdoors, trying to have an active life instead of spending all the time in front of a computer.
Awesome.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Next question. Most memorable moment in your business journey?
I think the most memorable moment was securing deal 2. The reason for that was I saw the process working. It was the first time that I was able to validate the thesis and the process and the systems that I built were actually allowing me to do the things that I was dreaming of. Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic. And what is your favorite tool or resource?
This is a good one. Can I do a general one?
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Books.
Oh, wow.
Books. We can learn, somebody spent 30 years in a field and they condensed it to 200 pages and we can consume that and change our lives. So self-education.
Amen.
Through books.
Love it. That's why I love the power of podcasts, the power of books, the internet. I mean, it's all the ephemeral, just kind of dissemination of information. So
absolutely.
So Dominick, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I use LinkedIn. You can find me Dominick Blue on LinkedIn. Twitter at Dominick_Blue. Those are the two main places. And then if people want to reach out via email, ask questions, my email is Dominick, DOMINICK, at nostragroup.com. And I'll give you the info so you can put in the show.
Cool. We're going to post in our show notes to your website too, because the Perfect. AI stuff, because I'm going to sign up. And,
Sounds good.
Man, yeah, buddy. Thank you so much, man. Really enjoyed meeting with you and talking with you.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dominick.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.